sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you. If you're a subscriber, if you watched my videos before, you know I do usually videos about IT management or movies. But you also know I've studied history for 40 years. What you just saw was way more pivotal in this country's history than you might imagine. This is a foundational threat to the entire nation. And the reason for this is what a lot of Republicans and some independents have been saying for a while about the fitness of the President of the United States has now been exposed for all to see. If you think this is going to be a video attacking the Democrat Party and pro-Republican Trump, you are wrong. This is not about the election. This is about something much more important. We've never had anything like this in our nation. If you've studied history as long as I am, or if you're even know a little bit of history, you're probably thinking, well, Woodrow Wilson had this issue and Edith Wilson took over. It's not the same. Most of the public didn't know that Wilson had suffered a stroke and was having problems. And there's some evidence, I don't know that I agree with this, that Wilson may have been even more aware at times. It's irrelevant. This is about the consent of the governed. Right now, in this nation, after that debate performance, and this is not a one-time bad night, as President Obama said, that's patently false. We have seen these issues building up. So the question becomes, if Joe Biden is not making the executive decisions, who is? When a law comes in from Congress and is being signed by the president to make it law, is it valid? In a constitutional republic, or any form of democracy, the consent of the governed is important for several reasons, but the most important is if a crisis faces the nation, and I'm going to give you 3 examples and you'll see clearly what the problem is here. Even if you didn't vote for the guy, it doesn't matter. You know other people did. You know he got millions and millions of votes. He won an election. So he has the consent of the governed. Right now, that's clearly not the case. Some of his own staff are saying he's only really active from between 10 and 4. So before we get started much further, I'm going to ask you one favor. I think this is an existential threat to the nation. I think it's a foundational constitution and government issue. Everybody does these videos, hits that like and subscribe. Don't want you to do that. Don't hit like and subscribe. Please. I beg of you, send this video to your congressman, to your senator, to your governor, to your local township trustee, your mayor, your councilman. This is that important. If you stick with me, I'll show you why. I'm going to give you 3 examples of where this could go really badly for this country. The first is a financial crisis. Like when we had in 2008, George W. Bush had to make some tough decisions. He had to be engaged at all times. He had to sign off on laws through Congress, through executive orders. A lot of people didn't like George W. Bush, but they knew this was the person we voted for. This is who makes the decisions. At least we know who's ultimately responsible, and we know that the people, more than one of them, were from our constitutional system, voted him in. It was accepted. The pandemic, shutdowns, mandates, a lot of people knew when Trump was still president, a lot of people didn't vote for him, didn't like that guy at all. Hey, remember they weren't going to take the shot, but they knew this guy's the elected president. Biden takes over, this guy's the elected president. What if those decisions were made now? Who would be making those decisions? If there's no accountability to the people don't feel accountable for the decisions that are made. These things descend into chaos. We've seen this historically. Again, this is not a Woodrow Wilson, Edith Wilson issue. The public knows this now. That video you just saw makes it clear to everybody it's the end of a chain of events, not the beginning. The last and most critical right now is, what if China invades Taiwan? Or some people, I don't see this from a historical perspective. People think Russia may expand this. Well, what if that happens? The response to this, we have to know who the point person is. We do not. The president during a war or a true threat to the nation has to be able to marshal the resources, the money, the backing of the American people. You're not going to get 100% of them. But most people have to feel like, well, this was the guy that's in charge. We're all accountable for this. We're all one nation. If this happens now, nobody believes that, left or right. So this is why this is so critical. And I don't think we have weeks, months. We have days, maybe hours to resolve this issue. There's another reason for this. If something happens now in terms of war, and then the Democrats say, okay, we get this as a problem. Joe Biden's going to have to step aside. Kamala Harris, you might not like her. She doesn't have high approval. It doesn't matter. She was elected on that ticket. We have accountability. We have buy-in from the American people. She can make these decisions. But if you do that after a week, after the crisis hits, people aren't stupid. They're going to look back and say, well, wait a second. Who got us into this mess? So now I'm going to appeal to Democrats and Republicans both on different sides. Republicans, I've got a lot of Republican friends. I ran for Congress as a Republican against John Boehner in 2012. John Boehner's a very nice guy. The reason I ran, you go back and look at some of my videos, I didn't think he was a very well-read guy. I didn't think he understood monetary policy enough. Today, all these guys are like this. And at the top, we have a real problem. If you're a Republican, this isn't about the election. It's not. This is about the country. If something breaks, and I gave you 3 examples, I could think of 5 or 6 more, probably a dozen more. You can rattle apart the foundational fabric of the entire civilization, the entire nation, so quickly you cannot recover from it. And we're already skating on some pretty thin ice in this country. You hear media pundits and politicians say we're more divided at any time since the Civil War. It's demonstrably false. We are way more divided right now than we were at the Civil War. It's just the threat isn't quite the same. The division is the same, but the lines are clearer. So in working through all this, we have to figure out, okay, now if we leave Biden there, something bad happens, it goes south. It was already on thin ice. This thing will collapse quickly. You may think it's better if Biden stays in there because then Trump, you think, will win. There may not be much to salvage it. If you're a Democrat, don't do this just to replace Trump or Biden so you think the next guy could beat him. We're hearing a lot about that. You have to go with Kamala Harris. If one of these things breaks and you've already replaced Biden with Kamala Harris, at least people know she's a rational human being. You may not agree with her politics, but she can understand the issues if she's woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, lending has frozen up all over the world. China has invaded Taiwan. The pandemic, there's a new pandemic spread. You know she's able to rationalize and make a better decision than Joe Biden would. If you Democrats wait until that convention and something happens between now and then you say, oh, we got to replace him, this issue hit, you're too late. They're going to look back at months and say, well, who made all these decisions? That, again, will rip apart the fabric of the nation. Even authoritarian regimes would struggle with this. If the mass of the people are confused by the leadership, you're going to have problems. Again, I asked at the beginning, I'm going to ask one, please share this with other politicians, media types who can try to finally get their arms around how critically important this is. This is not hyperbole. It is not. If you see these 3 things I said and you say to yourself, okay, I could see that could be a problem, but it would only go to this or it would only do this. No, you're wrong. The problem you're thinking of, maybe some riots here and there, a couple people get killed or hurt, or there's demonstrations that get a little out of hand. No. Think of the worst case scenario in your mind and increase it exponentially by 10 times. These things can rattle out of control in hours. if nobody knows or feels accountable for decisions being made, including the people, everything's fair game. No laws count. This is, if you've ever, I'm not an expert on this, but I've read a lot about the French Revolution. That was horror for everyone. During the revolution, the fighting itself, nobody's got it easy. And I want to wrap this up with an appeal to Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, this whole squad, Ron Klain, Barack Obama, the former president. You do not want the mass of people thinking you covered up something that you really had you probably have no nefarious intentions. Barack Obama does seem like a very intelligent person. But people will turn on you, close to you, if they think you covered this up. It doesn't matter if it's true. You cannot have this. It would be such a disaster for all society. We are a divided nation. But I think it was Churchill, I read a lot of history, so I get my quotes mixed up, said the American people always eventually do the right thing. Now is time to transcend not just politics, but your own ego. Now is the time to say, this is a tough decision. I don't want to make this, but it has to be made. Republicans, it's not the time to gloat and say, well, we're going to get Trump back in there. I get it. And now's the time to fix this issue. This is an existential threat to the foundation of the nation. This thing could spin out of hand again, not in months, weeks, days. This could spin out of hand in hours. If China invades, if there's an economic collapse or financial collapse, a pandemic, the people aren't going to be engaged because they're not going to know what the top is. They're just going to know it's not what they think it is, or they're told it is, that Joe Biden's not making a decision. You damn well better have an answer when they say who is, and you cannot do it after the fact. That's the big mistake I think Democrats are making right now. They're thinking, well, if something goes really wrong, we use the 25th Amendment, we'll have Joe Biden step aside, we'll have Kamala Harris, at least you're too late then. You have to do this before. You're playing dice with the lives of 330 million Americans. This is not going to be a good look for you. And as bad as it will be for you, because people will come after you, you don't want to live in a society, in a civilization, where justice is at the end of a pitchfork and a torch. It's bad for everybody. Again, I know you folks don't know me. I started reading history when I was 14. It's been way more than 40 years now. This is bad. I beg of you, two things. One, send this video to politicians, right and left, Republican and Democrat, Independent, Bernie Sanders, send it all. If you hear any rebuttal to a word I've said in this, leave a comment. I hope you prove me wrong, but you will not. I will answer every comment that tries to rebut this the best I can. I think I'm right. I think we're in a bad spot in this nation. I think we have hours to fix this, perhaps. Not days, and certainly not until the next convention. Thank you for watching. If you're the praying type, now's the time to pray for your nation.